On the outside, Tiz the Law bids up boldly now to challenge Ete Indian for the top. Chivalry at a huge number cuts the corner and tries to fight on. Gouverneur Morris is loose and charging on the far outside. Less than a quarter of a mile to go. Manny Franco sets down Tiz the Law and he's moving away. Chivalry is now outrunning Ete Indian for second. Gouverneur Morris is now fourth. Less than a 16th to go in the Florida Derby, and it's time to respect the law. Tiz the Law is your Florida Derby winner. He won by 3 over Chivalry second, Ete Indian third, then Gouverneur Morris and Independence Hall to complete the high five in 150 flat.
All right, so welcome back to Racing Rundown today. As I mentioned yesterday in the Woody Stevens preview, we would be back today with a Belmont Stakes preview, and also, as I did say, our friend Jay Privman from Daily Racing Forum is joining us on this show. So, as always, we're very happy to have Jay with us. So, without any further delay, so how are you doing today, Jay, to start off with?
I'm good. I'm missing being able to travel to New York for the Belmont, but, glad that racing is back, at least going in some form, and glad that, we've got a nice card this weekend.
That's obviously the first thing to kind of get to, is the fact that this is a very different Belmont Stakes than any of us have ever experienced before. It's not the first time the Belmont has been run at a different distance than a mile and a half, but everyone has grown accustomed to that, and it's the first time in a long while. So, first of all, how does the distance change affect the outcome of the race? A lot of these horses, you look at it and say, you could have, had there been a normal Belmont, you could have seen a lot of these horses running in it, but with the fact that it is 3 furlongs shorter, how does that affect everything in terms of the runners of this race?
Well, there's a lot of different things that are different. Not only the distance, but to your question, these are horses that are, a lot of them are coming off of a layoff or have had just maybe one recent race, but that's it. Whereas usually when you're coming into the Belmont, you're at the end of the Triple Crown Trail and you've had quite a few races to build up to the mile and a half. This year, you've got horses coming off of a layoff or just, like I said, with that one recent prep, but they only have to go a mile and an eighth. And it's a one-turn race at Belmont Park as opposed to one lap around the whole track. So it's a different race, and it's different dynamics too, both in terms of the preparation that horses have had and in terms of the way the race will be run, because it should unfold at a faster pace, and it's a middle distance kind of race as opposed to a long distance race.
Now, a lot of people would look at a race like this and see, obviously there's the one big horse in this race, Tiz the Law, that most people believe is the best horse in the country in terms of 3-year-olds. And, kind of, I don't want to say unfairly, but with a horse of the caliber that Tiz the Law is, kind of overlook a lot of the rest of the field and not really notice the fact that this is a good caliber field for a race like this, even with the fact that there is the presence of a horse like Tiz the Law that's kind of a giant of this division.
No, you're right. I mean, you've still got some horses in here that are very accomplished or are real up-and-coming type horses, but have run fast, but maybe haven't run against this caliber of horses before, but certainly look like they could be that good. For instance, like Tap It to Win looks like a real up-and-comer, and Dr. Post. They're horses that look like they have the potential to be very good horses, and this will obviously be a big step for them. Then you've got horses like Soleil Volante and Max Player and Modernist, who were previous stakes winners already. And of course, you've got a horse like Pneumatic, who I thought ran a good race behind Maxfield at Churchill Downs in his most recent start. And a hard-knocking horse like Farmington Road, who seems like he's capable of continuing to progress. I mean, it's not the kind of field you'd have had in the first leg of the Triple Crown had it been the Kentucky Derby 7 weeks ago, but it's still a good, strong race for what it is, which is a mile and an eighth race for 3-year-olds. That's kind of, because of the way this year has played out, it's an early season race as opposed to a mid-season race.
Now, you look at a horse like Tiz the Law, who I'll touch on to begin with. He has answered really all the questions, and there's not really any much doubt with him anymore as to is he the leader of this pack that's pretty much been established since the win in the Florida Derby. What has impressed you the most about Tiz the Law, and do you think there's a vulnerability that he carries into this race?
Well, first off, I wouldn't say that he's been the leader of the pack since the Florida Derby. He's been among the leaders of the pack since the Florida Derby, but he's become the leader of the pack because of some attrition that's happened to the division. I think there might have been some people out there who would have ranked Nadal or Charlatan or even Maxfield as good or better than Tiz the Law, but it's moot now because they've all gone by the wayside. And in terms of answering all the questions, I would debate that too, because as I've noted repeatedly in some of the things I've written for the Daily Racing Form, the one thing that Tiz the Law hasn't shown yet is the ability to race inside and overcome that position and do well. It was exposed, I thought, in the Kentucky Jockey Club, and then in the Holy Bull earlier this year, he was very uncomfortable inside, and Manny Franco made a very aggressive move to get him to the outside. He had an outside position in the Florida Derby, and he drew very well in this race. So I think we still don't know how he would do if he was drawn inside in a two-turn race going around a ground like potentially the Kentucky Derby. So that's still, for me at least, a question to be answered. But in terms of this race Saturday, where he's drawn and who he's running against, yes, he is the best horse. He's trained well since the Florida Derby. He's trained by a top trainer in Barclay Tagg, and I think you'll see him give a terrific account of himself.
Now, even though Tiz the Law is here, there, as we mentioned earlier, there are a lot of other horses that are previous stakes winners or up-and-comers in this division. Who would you say is the most eye-catching of the not Tiz the Law horses, in your opinion?
Well, in terms of just his most recent performance, you might say Tap It to Win, because he just ran so fast in that allowance win. He's obviously come back a lot better horse at 3 than he was as a 2-year-old, but he's not run against a horse of the caliber of a Tiz the Law before. He drew the rail in the Belmont, so he's going to have to go from there. The other horse, as we were mentioning just a few minutes ago, who I put in the same category, is Dr. Post, also lightly raced. He's 2 for 2 this year, and he also hasn't run against a horse the caliber of Tiz the Law. But both those colts look like they have plenty of upside, and they might be the kind of horses that we're going to be hearing even more about coming out of this race. But still, clearly, Tiz the Law is the horse to beat.
Now, one horse in this race that has run the most recently is Soleil Volante. We mentioned him as a previous stakes winner, won the Sam Davis earlier at Tampa Bay Downs. He is coming back, and it is going to be off of a 10-day layoff from his most recent race, an allowance at Gulfstream. Does that concern you, the fact that he did run so recently, and the fact that he might not be in the best position coming out of that race in terms of freshness, if you could say that?
No, it doesn't, because I think it depends on the kind of style you have when you're coming back on short rest. I think if you're a speed horse that has to run hard all the way in a race and then you wheel back quickly, I think it's harder for a horse with that style than it is for a horse who has the style that Soleil Volante does, which is to let the speed horses burn themselves out and pick up the pieces and come with a late run, which is what he did in the one-turn mile at Gulfstream 10 days prior to the Belmont. And it's the same style that he'll obviously try and utilize in the Belmont Stakes, hope that a fast pace unfolds in front of him. He also, I think, probably needed the race. He hadn't run in a long time going into that Gulfstream race, so it was kind of a paid workout, I thought, for him. He got a nice setup with his style, and he was able to get some real good exercise in and get paid for it, as opposed to if he just had a fast work in the morning.
Now, one of the things that is definitely worth mentioning is the fact that there are several horses that are coming in this race off of significant layoffs. One of them is Max Player, who was pointing towards the Wood Memorial at Aqueduct before That race was unable to be held. He hasn't run since the Withers, and also Modernist, who is coming off of a nice third in the Louisiana Derby. He was one of the divisions of the Fairgrounds prior to that race. Do the layoffs with those two horses concern you in terms of this race and how that could affect them?
A little bit. More concerning for me is I don't know how good they are. I've not been a big booster of Max players. I've always thought he was kind of a cut below the best of these 3-year-olds, but that's based on the form that we saw through February. It's not impossible that he'd be a better horse now, but he's coming off of, as you mentioned, a long layoff, 4.5 months in his case, and I think it's a lot to ask a horse who might not be this good anyway, and then you're taking the worst of it in terms of the layoff. I mean, he's coming into this race off a longer layoff than anybody. Then you've got a horse like Modernist, who I thought benefited from fairly soft pace situations in his last couple of races. And even though last time he really couldn't get over from a good post position, I thought if he was a really top 3-year-old, he could have run a little bit better against that group in the Louisiana Derby. That said, I have the utmost respect for his trainer, Belmont. I think he's one of the best of all time, and I don't think he would have decided to go in this race if he thought he was overmatched. So I think he'll run a good race, but on paper, I just think he and Max Player are cut below the better ones in here.
How do you think a potential pace setup is going to be in this race? Do you think there's going to be a fast pace on the front end with Tapatouin going out and possibly 4 left going up with him, or is it going to be a little bit more of a average to below pace, like a 111, 112 for 6 furlongs type?
Well, I mean, it could be a 111 pace, depending on how fast or slow the track is, could be a fast pace going 1.1 miles if the track is deep and tiring. I do think it has the potential, though, to be a contested pace. Tapatouin has to go from the rail. There's obviously no turning back from there. And the horse that you brought up, Jack, 4 left, I mean, he's a horse who's got speed, and he should be, I would think, forwardly placed. And that sets up the potential for those two to go fairly quick early. And I think even Pneumatic will be forwardly placed and helping to push the pace along. I don't think Modernist is quite as quick as those horses, but he also likes to be forwardly placed. And Tiz the Law will be up there. He's not going to be battling for the lead as Tiz the Law, but he'll be right in the hunt. So I think there's the potential for this race to have a fairly honest pace in here, and that would be a benefit, I think, to the horses coming from behind, and that it would make it a fair race as opposed to just being a merry-go-round.
So if there were, in a sense, a pace meltdown, who do you think that would benefit the most? Obviously, one could jump to a horse like Farmington Road, who's been the type to come from the back in the past, and also could that negatively affect some of the horses that, like Tiz the Law, wouldn't be up there contesting for it, but would be fairly close to it?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to affect Tiz the Law, because I think he's got the right style. That even if they're going too fast, because of where he's drawn from post 8, he can take back off of it and sit a really good trip. He's not a runoff kind of a horse, and so I think he's going to be okay no matter how the race unfolds. He can be tactical if the pace is slower than expected, and if they really rocket ship out of there, he can take back a little bit off of it and sit a good trip. And that's the benefit you have of breaking from an outside post like he is, as opposed to being down on the inside where you've kind of got to go, and once you do, you're sort of committed from there. The horses, though, to your question, if it does turn out to be a really, really hot pace, the ones who are going to benefit most are certainly Farmington Road, who I thought ran a better than looked race in his division of the Arkansas Derby last time. He was asked to make a real extended run in there. And then the other horse, obviously, would be Soleil Volante, who just had that kind of a situation when he won his most recent race at Gulfstream. He wants a fast pace to run into. And so those are the two who would, I think, most benefit by the pace coming up really hot.
If you would say that, or if you would look at this race and find one horse that is the potential to fly under the radar and not really be taken the most seriously and could come in and run a big race, who would you say that would be?
Probably Farmington Road, because his price is 15-1. Like I said, I thought his race in Arkansas was better than looked because of what he was asked to do to make an extended run from well back. So I think he would be an under the radar one. Tap It to Win, Soleil Volante, and Dr. Post, they're all going to get pretty significant support. I think they're on the radar of most horse players, but I think Farmington Road would be the one who would best apply to the label of that you have there of who would be under the radar.
Who do you think ultimately does come out the winner this weekend?
I mean, Tiz the Law certainly looks like he's the best horse, and where he's drawn, he's going to be really tough to beat. He's going to get a great trip from out there. It's hard for me to gamble on him because he's going to be a short price, but I wouldn't want to really gamble against him. If he'd have drawn inside, I'd be much more interested in this race from a gambling standpoint, because I do think there's the potential for him to be vulnerable down there, but that's not what's going to happen here. So I think what I'm hoping is that it's a hot pace. He goes on and wins the race, and then I can get Farmington Road to come from well out of it and pick up the pieces to be second for an exacta.
All right. Well, once again, Belmont Stakes is this Saturday, again being run at 1 1/8, but it does grab Kentucky Derby points. 150 go to the winner. So for all intent and purposes, winner and second place are effectively in the Kentucky Derby, provided that they would stay healthy for that. So once again, he's Jay Privman. Thanks for stopping by. Always great to have you on the show, Jay.
Anytime, Jack. Thanks again.
Less than a quarter of a mile to go in the Holy Bull. Tiz the Law sets sail under Manny Franco and moves to a 3-length lead. Ete Indian is back to second, well clear of Toledo Turf in third with 1/8 of a mile left to go. Tiz the Law shifting ground to touch. He's down toward the inner rail, but he's in front. Ete Indian is game, but he's only second best to Sakatoga Stables. Tiz the Law, your Holy Bull winner.